Carl Wright, Oscar C. Wright, one of the most prominent citizens in Oakland and an educational activist for many years. Mr. Wright, you are a contributor to children, youth, families, and citizens throughout the city of Oakland, and you have been one leading as a spokesperson, representative, chair, vice chair, friend, advocate, volunteer, worker, contributor, builder, and you've been about restoring, preventing, constructing, beautifying, and supporting. Could you tell us when you started, where you were born, and just a bit about your early years?
I was born in Mississippi in Coahoma County on a Smith plantation to sharecropper parents. And as a boy there, my parents realized early that Mr. Smith didn't permit black boys to go to school. So in finding that out, they moved away from the plantation to another plantation owned by my two uncles, great uncles, Uncle Bob, Uncle Dank, to a place called New Africa. And that's where my brother Fred was born. Later things didn't get any better, so my parents moved to a little town in the Mississippi Delta called Clarksdale, Mississippi. And from that on, from my fifth brother through the 11th child was born in Clarksdale, Mississippi.
What year were you born, Mr. Wright?
I was born on July the 25th, 1923.
And tell us about your family growing up.
My family was sharecroppers. And as I pointed out before, how we moved from the sharecroppers from the plantation to the town. We moved in a little place called the Round Yard in a little town called Clarksdale, Mississippi. That place where the city had built a group of little three-room houses, they call them shotgun houses, and rectangular farms where there was one water spigot in the center of the back of all of the houses, meaning that you could come out the back door of any house and see any other back door. And all of the water supplies came from this one water spigot there in Clarksdale. They was called quarters at that time, and our quarters was called Lewis's quarters instead of projects now.
Tell us about your elementary and high school and what years those were when you graduated and the different tributes that were made to you when you were a young boy growing up.
At elementary school, we were never able to go to school until the first Monday in November, being very poor and having the whole family having to make contributions at a very young age. We had to pick cotton and do whatever chores we had to do to try to get ready to make it through the winter months until the next spring. So school started in the little town on the first Monday in September. We were never able to go until the first Monday in November. Naturally, that put us 2 months behind. And when we started the school in the first Monday in November, we had all had one pair of shoes. We went barefooted until it got cold, too cold to go barefooted, so we used that one pair of shoes. And we went to school from then on until the first Monday in June. We was fortunate, however, to have a mother and a father who had gone through about 5th, 6th, 7th grade maybe, and who could read and who understood the importance of education. And they stressed to us the need for us to do our very best to get the best education we could. And in the process, they also encouraged us to not to let any kind of crutch come in that we were poor or anything of that. In fact, we didn't even know we was poor, I don't think, at that point. But they taught us what they knew to teach us while we were out of school, the 2 months. And when we went to school, we was fortunate to have teachers and principals there who understood that we were behind in our conditions. And they went to all lengths to try to help us. And as a result, naturally, every first semester we came up, we had very poor I say I had very poor score because I had one or two brothers who were very bright and they caught on real fast. But I was able, what we call, to pass at the end of the first semester. At the close of every second semester, I was always be able to be up with the rest of the class. But that came about because the teachers we had in the first semester, knowing we were behind, they would come to the house and they would have us to come to school early and spend time late with us to catch us up. And in the middle of the second semester, they would always give us a test of the same test we had on the end of the first semester. And as a result, we was able to maintain a kind of a reasonable, what we call now, grade point average.
You were such an outstanding student. Could you tell us about your junior high and elementary? Were you the graduation speaker?
In junior high school, even though I was the graduating speaker of the junior high school, that came about because there was several other students who I tried to compete with. And as I said before, parents never permitted you to have an excuse. Neither did the teachers. So I was able to maintain a fairly high grade point average. We called it test scores then. And as a result, I was chosen at the end of my junior high school as the graduating speaker. And I was the graduating speaker. My father took me to the school that night of the program. My mother wasn't able to go because she always had two babies, either one in the arm and one in the chair, or one in the stomach and otherwise. There were 11 children of us, and we were only about 2 years apart, and I would never remembered her without two babies. But at that night, I made my graduating speech, and everybody seemed to be very overjoyed as to how I made the presentation. And they gave my dad a lot of accolades and things. And on the way back, we had to walk about 2-3 miles. The principal of the school caught up with me and my father, and he said to me, called out and asked us to wait a minute. And he said, did you know, Walter, you gotta call my father Walter. So you have a very bright son here. We're very proud of him. He really tries. He's not the brightest kid in the world, but he really tries hard. And he's gonna be all right if he keeps up what he got. And that made me feel real good.
What year was that you graduated from?
Oh, let's see, what year was that now?
You were about how old?
I was, we had what we call 10th grade. So that was 1938 probably.
Then when you went to high school, in 1942, you graduated from high school?
I graduated from high school.
Could you tell us about your high school experience?
Well, when I started high school, that was the first time when the 11th grade, because in the little town, school for black kids didn't go any higher than 10th grade. And there was one school for black kids in the whole county, Coahoma County, for black children. And at that year, I had begun to work some part-time, and I was able to start for the first time school on the first day of school in the 11th grade. And as a result, I was able to keep pace with the rest of the class. I remember 3 students I competed with, they were very bright students. One was named Ruth McDowell, the other was Oscar Williams, and another was Floyd, and another, that was 4, S.D. Thompson. They were very bright and looked like they just caught on to anything, just pop up. And I struggled to catch on, but upon graduation, I was chosen to be the graduating speaker for my high school class. And I thought about the other 4 students there who I had kind of felt like was better students than I was. You know, they called it, I think, that time the valedictorian and the salutatorium, I think. Anyway, I remember mentioning to my advisor, who was a young teacher, that my concern about the other students. and she said that she didn't think that there would be any animosity toward the other students, that she had talked with them and they thought that they had made a good choice, that in fact they had participated in choosing me as the graduating speaker. One of the reasons being because at an early age, when we went to church, you know, we had to learn speeches and poems and recitations and songs, and we had to stand before the little congregations and say our speeches and say the poems and sing the songs and things. And I guess I had shown that, you know, that I wasn't stage frightened, you know, to the degree that the other kids, you know, realized, you know, that they would want me to be represented. But on that night, my father, I really wanted my father to be there. 2 days before graduation, there was a young man whose parents was well off, and he had gone to Detroit, Michigan, to live. He was older than I, and he happened to come in a few days. And he came out to the school, and he wanted to know about where I was. You know, he knew we lived close together, but they were much better off, you know. They called me Fox. So they found Fox. And to his surprise, I had grown up almost big as I am now, and almost as tall as I am now. And he was surprised, but he was, you know, glad to see me and everything. And he had found out that I was going to be the graduating speaker. And he came up and he congratulated me and said, "You poor dude," said, "nobody ever thought you'd be a graduating speaker." He said, "What you going to wear for your graduation?" But my father had gotten me a pair of pants, or a kind of green type tweed pants, and a gray-looking coat. He came to the house, and I showed him what I was going to wear. He said, "Oh, no." So he took me and got me a new suit of clothes. And that night at graduation, he took me out to the school. My father was to come later, but he had to work. And during the time when we started the graduation ceremony, I kept looking for my father. I was sitting up on the stage. I kept watching the door for my father to come in, and I never saw him come in, you know. But anyway, the time finally came that I had to make my graduation presentation, so I made my speech, you know. And everybody went in a minute. I went to sit down almost. I looked and saw my father come in the door. And I was very hurt. I didn't realize then.
Mm-hmm.
My father.
Yes. Yes, I understand. Yes, indeed. That means so much because that was Coahoma County Agricultural High School, and that was 1942. You were a member of the Building Trades Club,
That's
basketball and football teams. You won a state championship without having a coach at the school, and the other members of the team worked with you together. And you
7 team members.
17.
Yeah, Carl Wright, Lander Beck,
Yes.
Louis Walker, Harry Hamilton, Lander Lowe. I can't think of the other, but then myself.
And also, you were selected as an all-state football team for 2 years.
2
without
years.
a coach. You did it yourselves.
I didn't really do it
You're
myself.
The group of you.
There wasn't a football team, it was the basketball team.
And you were the speaker. So after that, through the years, you were married there and you had children. Could you tell us about your family?
Yes, before that I went into the service, and right after I graduated, they drafted me into the United States Army. And there I served until 1946. And after I was discharged from the service, I then enrolled into Alcorn A&M College.
You've had some accomplishments, Mr. Wright. The Northern Mississippi Board of Directors under your classmate Medgar Evers.
Yes, that was the law. That was pertained to the NAACP. Aaron Henry and Medgar Evers, and my father was some of the first founders of the first NAACP branch in Coahoma County.
And you organized and served as president of the first Black Conservation League.
Yes, that information there, that came about from white fellow by the name of, I don't recall his name at this point, but anyway, he and I happened to be good friends because we fished a lot. Tom McLeod was his name. And one morning we went to fishing on a lake there, and he informed me that we need to organize ourselves, black people, we called Negroes then. And because what white people was doing then, they was forming all kind of conservation leagues and all kind of hunting, sporting clubs and things. And they was beginning to lease up all the land in and around the good fishing lakes and the rivers and things like that. And we wouldn't be where you could hunt in good hunting areas, and we wouldn't be able to go into those places and hunt and fish. So we needed to organize our conservation league, and I didn't know what that was at that time, but he explained to me what it was, and he offered to assist me in getting the information there, and he said that we could lease so many thousands of acres of land from the federal government so we could have access to these places. So a group of us black fishermen and hunters got together, and we formed, with the help of this white man, a conservation league, and we was able to get a charter, and we was able to lease several thousands of acres of land in different places so we could have, black people could have access to the fishing and hunting places there in the county there around our area.
Creating access has been one of your strong suits, Mr. Wright. You were one of 3 men to organize the first black Boy Scout troop in northern Mississippi.
Yes, that came about. There was a Catholic priest, a white Catholic priest that came in our town. And we didn't know anything about Catholic. We knew, saw white Catholic because we was all segregated at the time. We knew very little about the Catholic, but he came into town and went to organize to set up a black Catholic church there. And his name was Father O'Leary. So Father O'Leary then, he scouted around and he found out some of the people that was active in the community there. And there was a young man by the name of Henry Baltimore, and can't think of the other now. But anyway, he was a mayor, one of the first black mayor men and carriers in that town, Otha Hatchett. And myself, he picked us out to start the Boy Scout, black Boy Scout troop there in Clarksdale, and we did. And he started us to, naturally he brought something in that we had never had, and we saw some hope there in that thing. So he started to study Catholicism, earlier, and we began to look at that. But in the second year there, I picked up a newspaper there called the Clarksdale Daily Register, and I saw that there was the White Boys type scoop was sponsoring the Scout-A-Rama for that area of that year. So I went and confronted Father O'Leary and showed him what I had seen in the newspaper and asked him what we were going to be, our kids going to be able to participate in that Scout-A-Rama, because we thought we had trained our kids very well. And he said to me, he said, it's traditionally black kids and white kids don't compete in the South here. So your other kids won't be able to compete. And at that time I questioned him about, I knew about the Bible, I brought up in church. And I said, you're not representing Jesus. Then what the way you said traditionally, you're a minister supposedly representing the teaching of Jesus. Then what are you talking about, the tradition? The question is whether it's right or wrong. And he turned white on me then, and he blasted me out. And he had me to know that I would no longer be a part of that Boy Scout troop.
Mr. Wright, you were also one of 6 men to organize the first veteran of foreign wars in the state of Mississippi.
Yeah, that's true too. There was another white man by the name of I can't call it anyway. He was, my father worked for him, and as a laborer, starting out as a laborer. And he realized, you know, that we had gone to the service and we had served in the United States Army, so he thought that we ought to have an organization. So he pulled together a group of us, and he met with us on many occasions and had us to know that we had a right to organize veterans of foreign war births there in the state there.
After your honorable discharge, you in World War II, you attended college in 1946. Could you tell us about your college experience?
Well, the college experience, I was very excited. I had gone through the service and naturally having been the graduating speaker when I graduated from junior high and high school, and then gone into the service and been placed into combat engineers. At that time, you had all black soldiers and all white officers. We were segregated. But early in my basic training, the white officers must have saw something in me, and they, upon completion of my basic training, they promoted me to buck sergeant. And they went to find out about, I knew a lot of things. We had to learn a lot of things coming up. But anyway, they encouraged me. They wanted to know what college did I attend and what, you know, did I take algebra and geometry and physics and all. I had never heard of it because during our formal training, we only had one semester of geometry in high school, and our senior year we had what we call high arithmetic. But anyway, they had encouraged me to go to college. You know, when you get out, you ought to go and enroll in college in civil engineering. And I had made up in my mind that I'm going to college. And when I came out of the service in April, I had informed my father that I wouldn't be there working with him long, that I would go into college. And I did. I enrolled into college. And then early after I enrolled in college there, I found that upon enrolling that there was no such thing as, black college didn't offer in any form of engineering at that time, no pre-med, no pre-law, no pre-dentistry. It was mostly agriculture and mechanical. But they did have a course that they called building construction. And in that course, it required, rather than 32 units of mathematics as a civil engineer did at the time, 22 units. And my first course was college algebra. And naturally, entering into that first course, within a couple of weeks, my instructor advised me to change my major, take a terminal course, because the content of what I had been taught didn't prepare me to be able to go to college and take that higher mathematics and thing. Fortunately for me, I was able again to have some people there on the campus, the old teachers, some of my friends and things. And then my determination, I didn't adhere to his advice. So I was finally able to make it through.
Your power of persuasiveness is very strong, Mr. Wright. And over the years, you worked with the governors and the board of trustees at the college to help them to pull the arts building together, the mechanical arts.
Well, what had happened there, it really wasn't working with them. One year, I was about the poorest guy on the campus, and our school left, the whole school left and went to visit Southern University one weekend. And I had married after that one year, and left me on the campus there along with the engineer and the campus police and a couple of other people there to keep things going. And I decided to make my first wife a cedar chest. And I had access to the mechanical art building there. We had some old outdated machinery and stuff, which I knew how to operate, you know. So I started, and when I returned, my instructor over mechanical art building there, he saw what I was doing, so he got in and helped me put that cedar chest together for my first wife. She still has it now. She's blind now. We divorced a long time ago, but anyway, he encouraged me then. He said, what you need to do, you ought to make up some cedar chests for the State Board of Trustees. and thing, you know, and we'll take them and give them to them. And then maybe they'll give us some more, you know, updated equipment and supplies and stuff. And he, along with the other students, helped me, and we assembled. We did all of it. We cut the material and planed it down and sanded and put it together. We made several seated chests, so we went and took it over to the Capitol building in Jackson one weekend. And our instructor, Mr. Thompson, went in the Capitol and informed them what was out there, you know. So the governor sent his representative out there, and they saw the chest, so he wanted to give them to him. And he told them that I was one of the poorest cats around, you know, which I was. But anyway, we left, and on returned to school after the holidays, returned to school, and in my mailbox I had a number of letters from state supervisors, and they had checks in there, you know. I had big money there, you know. But anyway, later on, the governor and his entourage came into the black college at Alcorn, set way back in the woods, about nothing there but Alcorn, 17, 18 miles back and down the old Mississippi River. And they came in, as usual, with the loud sirens and the motorcycles and things. And everybody wondered what was happening, including all the rest of us. But anyway, they drove up into the campus there, and there was the governor there, you know. So, in doing so, he got there, and they met with the president of the college and the other dean of instruction and stuff there. And they wanted to review the college, and especially the mechanical art building. So he asked them that I would show them the mechanical art building. He wanted to see where did I be. We put all those things. They gave me the credit, but I didn't build them all together. So when we got there, I told him what we could do if we had some better equipment and stuff, you know, and that sort of thing. But later on, they did appropriate money, the state appropriated money to build a new mechanical art building. And they wanted to, as I understand, to name it in my honor, but the alumni, our alumni, they contested and it wasn't done. But I do feel that I had something to do with
the name of that college. Tell us the name of your college.
Alcorn A&M College at that time. Now it's Alcorn State University, huge place now. It was the oldest land-grant college in the United States. It was built for aristocratic, only white, rich boys. And after they built Ole Miss and Mississippi State, they gave then Alcorn, the old Alcorn, because Governor Alcorn was the one governor that gave it to the black people, so they named the college then after Governor Alcorn. So after the Governor Alcorn, later years, until recent years, where they realized that they always provide for white students the very best. And in the last 15 years, they realized that Alcorn had moved almost 3,000 acres of land. So they now incorporated into the Mississippi State University along with Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Mississippi Southern. In fact, they had incorporated the three black state universities, Jackson State and the MVSC, the one where Jerry Rice went, and Alcorn State University. They're all part of the University of Mississippi now.
My goodness, that's amazing. On several occasions, you conferred with Dr. Martin Luther King, and you were active in the civil rights movement. You worked with Fannie Lou Hamer.
Yeah, long before Dr. King. My father, he was very bright, had very little formal education, but he's a real reader and a very bright man, and he studied the Constitution well. 1937, my father went down and registered to vote in Coahoma County in Clarksdale, Mississippi. He was given a pretty real rough time when he went down to attempt to vote. But on the morning that he went to leave, before he left, he had called my mother and told her that he was tired of talking, that had a number of black people had been talking about their right to vote for a long time, but they're tired of talking, so he was going down to register to vote. My mother, she cried and went on, tried to get him not to go because she's afraid for his life. But anyway, he went, and later on that evening he came back, and I remember we was in the front yard, and we saw him coming up the railroad track, ran to the house. We called our mother, Ma. Ma, here come Daddy. And Mother ran out to the porch. They called that a garret at that time. And she ran in the street and they went to meet him, you know. And they hugged up and came on back to the house. And she finally got to the porch. She said, what happened? He said, I registered to vote. And then from that time in 1944, my father, in fact, before that time, I had 2 older brothers. Every one of us became 21 years old. He saw that we went down and registered to vote in Mississippi in Coahoma County. And naturally at that time, you had the clerk would order you to read a passage of the Constitution of Mississippi State and explain to him, to his satisfaction, what it meant. And upon another day, then you paid $3 poll tax, you registered to vote. So I registered to vote in July the 25th, 1944, in Clarksdale, Mississippi, Coahoma County, and all of my brothers and sisters, as we became 21, we registered to vote in that. Later I found out how we was able to register to vote. My father then began to teach us, you know, the Constitution of the United States. And he taught us, you know, that the 15th Amendment of the Constitution reads that no citizen of the United States can be denied the right to vote because of race or color or previous condition of servitude. And down below it said Congress has the responsibility to enforce, or the right to enforce, this law. So that's why he just made sure that we was able to adhere to the Constitution. In fact, they forced the Constitution at that time. Of course, wasn't many people around us that was willing to follow through with that sort of thing.
So you were an All-American at Alcorn State. You got an award, All-American Award. What was that for?
That was for football. In fact, I got a scholarship to go to college on athletic scholarship, both basketball and football. But as I stated before, in my early first year, I realized with the strenuous training in football and basketball and my lack of a background to be able to compete, you know, and to move on in the academics, I went to the powers to be and asked them if I could find another way other than playing 2 sports that required a lot of time, training and away from school. And they put me then on what they call a work age scholarship. But I performed, according to what they say, at a very high level. And Faye Young, I don't know whether you all remember that, Faye Young was the black news reporter for the Chicago Defender and the Pittsburgh Courier. And every year he selected a black All-American team. At that time there were no blacks in the profession of ball, neither basketball or football. So when they said All-American, I was a black All-American selected, chosen by a black news reporter for the Chicago Defender, the 2 black major newspapers in the country, and the Pittsburgh Courier. His name was Faye Young.
You came to California. Tell us about that, when you came and your experiences in California.
I came to California in 1956. I had my father, I was very vocal there in the little town because I realized, you know, that a lot of things was wrong and I would speak up. And my father, my first wife, was afraid that I was going to be killed, so they kept after me to encourage me to leave and come away from there, you know. So finally, I picked up and came to California. I had a brother who had gone before me, to California, named Fred. He's in San Francisco. So I came to California, I guess we could say, to seek a better life and to get more security for my family and that sort of thing.
So what did you do?
Well, I came into California, and the first day I got here, my brother, they met me and he took me to his house, and he encouraged me to spend a few days looking around, you know, and just learning the city and that sort of thing. And I told him that I didn't come here to look at no city. I came to go to work, and I was capable of doing some things, you know. But he didn't encourage me in that thing. But anyway, I went on my own the next day, and I got to searching around and trying to find a job. And I knew I could do any kind of construction work, any kind of construction work. And every job I went to in San Francisco, naturally I was riding the bus. I didn't have no transportation, so it was few. But there was a lot of building going on at that time. I would go to the jobs and they would say to me, you know, do you belong to the union? And I would tell them, no, I don't belong to the union, because where I came from, they didn't have any union. And when you get in the union, then you can get a job. So when my brother came in, I informed him of such, so he told me where the union hall was. And I went to the union hall, and they asked me, said, can you have a job? And I told them, no, I don't have a job. They told me if I could get in the union, they would give me a job. So you had you know, and I thought that thought back, we said if you could get to California, you was get God's country. That's what we always say. Man, California's God's country, the Golden Gate, Golden Gate. And we boast about that. And that was very disappointing to me, you know, that even though they needed people, because at that time I didn't see many blacks around at that time on those jobs. But anyway, I was fortunate enough to go and finally walk upon a place over here on Fremont and Harrison one morning. They was just starting McGreen Cooks and Stewart Union Hall. And I was standing around and way there, and a white gentleman came along, and I asked him, who could I see to inquire about a job? And he said, I'm the cat that you would see. So he asked me, what did I know how to do? I told him, well, I know how to lay brick, I know how to carve, I know how to paint, I know how to do sheet metal, I know how to do glaze, and I went on to tell him. He said, well, I don't need all of that, I need a good carpenter. He says, do you belong to the union? I told him no, and I told him the story about the union, saying that I had to belong to the union, and the union said I have to have a job. So he gave me a note to take to the union hall, and I was able to get in local union 483.
My goodness, Mr. Wright.
And I end up at that job. I end up on that job they wanted me to follow them through the country there. I wouldn't follow them, no, but my performance was evidently of such that they knew, because I was well equipped to do any kind of construction.
Follow them and do
construction.
All over the country.
All over everywhere, yeah.
All over everywhere.
Mm.
You were so active in the Oakland Unified School District and in the city of Oakland and throughout the Bay Area. You ran for the Oakland School Board. You were a candidate for District 1. What year was that? And tell us about that experience.
That was 1982. At that time, I had been involved in the school there since 1962. I guess a little bit in about 63, I guess. My youngest daughter, she was about 3 years old, and she learned to read real early. She could read newspapers at 3, 4 years old. And my wife took her and put her into a little, they had real programs at the recreation centers in the city then. Down here at the Golden Gate Recreation called Tiny Tot. And naturally the kid had to be potty trained, and the parent had to come along with the kid. So my wife got involved, and that naturally pulled me into it, you know. Well, being involved in that, I got a big mouth, you know, and then I wanted to find out a lot of things about it, so I started getting involved there, you know, and that sort of thing. And from there on and on, you know, and my kids got old enough to go into elementary school right up here at Golden Gate School. And I got to be the chairman of the PAG there at the school there, and naturally I found out a lot. I had done a lot of research to find out exactly what the kids are supposed to be taught. And at that time, naturally, you had good black teachers up there at that time, Ms. Logan and Ms. Kang, and I could name several others of them, who would tell you, you know, that these kids here, you can't let them get off in these classes here and start learning colors and counting beans and things. They're going to have to start learning how to read from day one. So anyway, I learned real quick, about this thing. So in doing so, the district there then, they started just asking me, say, you need to go to the school board meeting. Well, I had never been in a school board meeting, anything. So I finally went to see the school board meeting, and I was naturally surprised there at that game that they played, and I got involved, and I've been involved ever since.
You served on the North Oakland District Council, the chairman of the Marcus Foster North Oakland Schools, the treasurer of the Golden Gate Improvement Association, vice president of the Golden Gate Neighborhood Association, president of the Ad Hoc Concerned Citizens Minority Caucus, and vice president of the Carpenters Union, local number 483, and many other groups. Your work all over led to a lot of contributions. You've always been an advocate of equality and uniformity of resources within the public schools. You talked about it in your platform, about equity, the issue of equity.
Right. Well, I need to back up a little bit, because in '82 there, the district there, after I really got off involved in the city thing, the city council meetings in the North Oakland District Council, and began to understand how this system operates, I began to become real vocal. And I didn't get vocal until I was informed, I knew what I was talking about. And I had looked up and found out that the district, Oakland School District, was only letting 1% of its contract to black contractors and black vendors. So we organized that, what you call the Ad Hoc Concerned Citizens Minority Caucus there. And in a matter of 6 months, Carol Wright Allen, you might have known her, she was part of that too. Of course, later on she got afraid of him, but she still loved him. In that 6 months, we was able to get $10 million worth of contracts for black contractors and vendors. We was able to get $3 million of contractors for black bus to Sanders Bus Company, 2 young black men out of Texas there. We was able to get cancel the contract with Otis Elevator and get the elevator services and repairs and maintenance for the school district for a black elevator operator. We was able to get all the office machine, typewriters, equipment repairs, and computers by Bell Typewriter Computer Company. We was able to get, for the first time, the black photographer that have a black high school yearbooks and take the high school pictures. He's downtown now on I think Broadway 9, that he's still there. We was able to get the cleaners there out there, college cleaners out there, to get all the athletic towel, linen, and contract and all this stuff. We was able to do a lot of things, so those groups got together. They was afraid to go front, so they made me the chairman of the group, so I was always the spokesperson. And after we was able to successful there, they encouraged me to run for school board. And they would support me, and I threw my hat in the ring. And before I did, there was a young woman who was in business down there. She was part of, I can't think of the name of the term I'm trying to use now. But anyway, she was over the money thing down there. And I got her to come here to the house on many occasions and teach me. Not that I didn't, I had some background in accounting and business law, and I had done a little book keeping and stuff like that, for self. And I had her to come and teach me how to understand budgets, and all the other stuff there. And after that, I jumped into the ring there, and to my surprise, only 2 of the vendors there, you all might remember Nash, who had this big office there on 36 and Telegraph, and he did all this paper and office supplies and stuff there. He was one of the fellows that got it. But anyway, only 2 of them gave me any kind of support. That was Bill Taylor, photography. He and Pat, his wife Pat, they had a fundraiser for me, and Melvin Bell and his wife, they had a fundraiser with all the rest of them walked away and left me. I went to the Baptist Ministers Union for support, and they promised me, I don't know whether y'all want me to call the names or not, but I'm telling the truth. I went to, at that time, Reverend Pinkin was the president of the Baptist Ministry Union. Reverend Blue was one of the officials, and Reverend M.T. Thompson, he was another. So I went to them and appealed for their support. They had me to come over to North Oakland Baptist Church one day where they would endorse me. I got there, Reverend M.T. Thompson met me at the door and took me back into the office. I think Blue was the pastor of that church at that time. And they told me that I had their endorsement. And I thanked them because I had another engagement pretty quick up in the Montclair area there to make, to meet with those white people up there. So anyway, I said to them, I said, I sure thank you. So I'll go in here. They had a whole sanctuary of black ministers. I said, I'll go in there and I'll thank them for their support. They said, that ain't necessary. You got it. I said, well, can I start using your name? They said, yes. And I left feeling real good. I got out there in Montclair, and I was running against Miss Elizabeth Lawson, who was a board member. She and Peggy Stinnett was in District 4 together, and I had been involved in pushing Dick Speech them to pass that district election thing. That was the first year of that, I had been really on the city council's chase, and especially Dick Speech, and his vote, passed the district election thing where you had to elect your people in district election. And I got out there and they had this place out there where we had our presentation, each one of us, Elizabeth Lawson and Susan Duncan and myself were running for the same thing. So we made our pitches, So they asked, would you give us some of your major endorsers? And lucky for me, they called Ms. Lawson first, because she was illegally running in District 1 because she was actually lived in District 4. But, I contested. But anyway, her first endorsement was the Black Ministers Union. And I died. But anyway, I ran. And I did very well. I got a guy named Renee Arnold, who was an expert in determining how votes would come out. And he informed me after he did his research that losing the support of the Black Ministers Union would mean that I wouldn't win. If I could have gotten that support, really gotten that support, I could have won that board seat that year, because I was the only black guy that had ever challenged anybody in that thing, and I was the only black running in that competition, and I had such a record of performance that people were supported. But if the ministers went against me, that I would. But I still got 37% of the votes, and I decided then I'll build my thing and run next time, and I did unsuccessfully.
In 1982, the Golden Gate School dedicated the auditorium to you, the Oscar C. Wright Auditorium.
Yes, in 1982. And that was one of the biggest surprises of my life. I had done everything around in this area here.
For real?
Over the, and my wife and I, we had planned a vacation, to take a trip. And they finally got to my wife and got her to cancel the trip. And as a result, I didn't know what was happening, but anyway, we stayed, but she knew what was going to happen. So that night I went down to that, she went down, we need to go down there, so I go down there. So many people down there, you couldn't stir them with a stick.
Well, Mr. Wright,
Dellums was the keynote speaker that night.
Congressman Dellums.
Congressman Dellums,
yes.
Yeah.
And also, I understand you filed a lawsuit against the Oakland Unified School District, and you won. That was, and I want us to just mention that briefly, and then go to the photographs.
Yeah. Well, I tried to get there from documentation, because after I realized how deeply rooted this institutionalized racism and how they was tracking these black children into these lower skill castes, simply meaning that the content of what these black kids was being taught, even if they achieved at the very highest level, they still would come out unable to do anything. I then filed this suit and to try to get information so I could file a bigger suit with the government. And I had to file this suit under the Freedom of Information, and I won it.
You won. Congratulations. Could you tell us about the photographs over there, please, Mr. Wright? Tell us.
Well, this photograph here at the bottom here to the right here is a picture of my father, J.W. Wright, and my mother, Emma Wright. This picture.
And your father was the first justice of the peace?
First black justice of the peace of Coahoma County. And he remained the justice of the peace. He had to run for office several times. But he had taken several tests and things. And he presided over thousands of cases. And only 2 was overturned at a higher court level. He retired, just walked away in 1982. He was weighing his 80 years old at that time. This picture here is a picture of my family with all of my brothers and sisters. There was 11 of us. From the oldest to the 7th was all boys. And then after the 7th, there was 4 girls. And this woman here in the middle is my stepmother, whom a lot of my younger brothers and sisters only knew as a mother. My mother died and left this kid here. She was 1 year and 2 days old. And later, a couple of years later, my father married this woman, and she came in, and she raised my other young brothers and sisters. This is my first wife and my first child, Oscar C. Wright, Jr. He's a fine young man now. He's in his 50s, and he got his own business, and he's doing real well. This is, and this is my last wife and our 3 children. Here, this is my last wife, Beulah. The best thing in the world ever happened to me. We started out with nothing, and she worked with me. I mean, she was a lot younger than I was, but I remember her pulling 5-gallon buckets of hot tar when I build and that sort of thing. But that's our family there, and she kept that. She's the glue that kept it together until the end. She left me in 1994, passed away. This picture here is a picture in 1947 when I received the Jack Dempsey Adams Hat Sports Trophy as the Athlete of the Year for the SCAC conference. That's Dr. Pike, who's the president of Alcorn A&M College. This is a picture of me when I received the Hall of Fame and the Alcorn State University there with the medallion there on, and one of my great nephews.
We'd like to thank you so much for sharing your life with us, and we just barely covered some of the things because you did so much. You were a fighter. Thank you very much for your dedication.